Hi guys, this is Joe. We are going to be talking with Brian Patacca today about finding aligned representation. So I'm very excited for you guys. I'm going to see if he is now joining our live. There he is. Let me get him in here. Yes. Brian is my favorite person to talk to, so I can't wait. Let's see. Come on. There you are.
Yay, so I'm going to be here.
Yes, I'm so happy to be here. Just before you joined, I was just saying you're my favorite person to talk to.
Oh, well, that's such a huge compliment. I appreciate that so much. I also appreciate that we're wearing really good colors together today because that was not even planned.
Oh, look.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, you're going to talk about one of actors' favorite subject, which is finding aligned representation. And I'm so excited that we're going to be talking about that because I think a lot of stories that actors are navigating with inside of the industry about representation, about finding the right representation, about how to go about it, what can you do without it, all of these things. And I think that actors can really, really use your help because there's a lot of negative mindset around it and perceptions that are not empowering. And so
Yes. So one of the biggest things, and just let me know if my internet connection gets weird, you'll tell me. But one of the things that I know is we've all had parents, or most of us have been blessed with parents. And so we bring all of those lovely parental psychological stories to what an agent or manager can be way too often. Give me validation. Tell me that I'm good at what I'm doing. Tell me I did a good job. Or teacher, or we could have a relationship with them like they're a teacher. Like, tell me I did a good job. Validate my acting.
exactly.
And then it becomes bigger. Like, prove to me that I've chosen the correct lifestyle for me, and the money that I spent on college was good, and that I moved to the right city, and that like it gets bigger and bigger, just keeps expanding. And what I find is, well, first of all, none of that is true. First of all, because inherently, if you were called to acting, you were called to acting, and that's the truth of who you are. And ta-da, end of story.
Yeah.
But it's very hard. It's a very slippery slope because agents and managers are a cloud of silence for most actors, where you are the reason why we ascribe so much story to your interaction with them is because you have so few interactions with them, and very often you're responded with silence. And so that silence is, okay, so I'm going to make up a story about what's going on because I'm not getting the truth. And what I find that actors tend to do, and it's heartbreaking, is then, a lot of actors will like get it up to like, I got it up. I'm gonna reach out to managers and agents, and they'll like do like a one push, or they'll do like a showcase, or they'll do like I've sent out a bunch of emails, and okay, and I didn't hear back from people, so I want me, and my career means nothing.
Totally.
Okay.
Oh, your connection is off, but it looks like
I think I just fixed it. Let me just see.
Nope. You came back for one second.
Wait, there we go. Is it better now?
You're
great,
there.
great. Okay, great. Okay. So we get it, and then they do that one time, and then nothing happens. And then for the next 3, 6, 9, 12 months, we're butthurt from that experience. And so then you don't do it again. And so you take from that experience. So from that experience of not getting response, we make up 1,000 stories about why it didn't work. So it's because you didn't have enough credits, you didn't have the right experience, you didn't have the right training, you didn't have the right headshots, you didn't have the right reel. And then we run off and spend money for all of and time and energy for all of these things to try to solve a problem that we created in the first place. So the perception is where the problem began. It's not the truth, right? And what I'm gravitating to and learning more, and this is always a learning curve for me too, right? I did all these interviews with managers and agents to ask questions, to actually get the real story here. And we have to remember that managers and agents are buying into your future. They're not buying into your past. And so the past is past meaning your resume, your credits, your training. Your past is how they say, oh, do I understand who this person is becoming? And that's a very different way to look at reaching out to managers and agents and approaching managers and agents, because most of the time we're like, let me show you my ID. I'm 21 years old. I belong in this club. Like, let me show you that there's enough on my resume. I'll never forget. We got this long time ago. I worked at this acting studio, and we got this call from someone who said, my resume is full. And like as a way of like saying like I was experienced enough, and I don't mean that to make fun of this actor, but I feel like my resume is full is sometimes that we relate to management. My resume is, I'm telling you that my resume is full, therefore we're meant to work together, as opposed to are the stories that I know how to tell the best, the ones that are being told right now in TV, film, theater, whatever I've chosen as my vision, and do you see that for me next? So that's kind of the big learning that I've had around this, I think, that, and that's to just, and that way it steps me out of it steps, I think, most actors out of the idea that there's one manager or agent who can understand them. The whole, like, there's only one betrothed person that you can ever love for your whole life. It falls very, like, I don't like to use romantic analogies when it comes to managers and agents because I want to be very clear that this is a business, right? But I think it becomes very similar in the way that we relate to it, right?
Totally.
Yeah.
Attachment, a lot of mom and dad stories thrown at it. Yeah, it's same as a romantic story.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah.
So what is you think the like, what's the how do you see actors struggle the most before they come and work with you? Where do they bang their head against the wall?
So the place where they bang their head against the wall is, of course, the place where then they also find the most satisfaction afterwards. You know, I think that's not surprising, as I say. I think you have to break down to break through sometimes. And so one of the things that I notice is, one of the things that I think is important is we have to own up to who we've been in our life this far. And once we get assessed, like what I mean by that is, so when you were 6, 7, 8, 24, 45 years old, you were like, oh my gosh, I'm meant to be an actor. And I think that in that moment, like time and space, which don't exist, disappeared. And you were like, I am home. This is who I'm supposed to be. And you got that intelligence, wherever that came from, whether it was in feeling, I'm getting the heebie-jeebies as I say this, right? Like whether that's a feeling or you heard a voice or whatever it is, you got that moment. And then from that moment forward, you began to organize your life to step into that calling. And so as you organize your life to step into that calling, you know the moments you made a good move. You chose that college, you chose that training program, you went to go get those headshots, like all those steps. And then along the way in that vulnerable journey to become what you are destined to be already, things happen. A teacher says something to you and you just hear it the wrong way. Or a teacher actually isn't being their best self and says something to you and you hear it the wrong way. Or you didn't get that part that you really wanted. Or you get some feedback in the room and it just got a little past your skin. It just got in a little bit and it left a mark and it left a scar, and you suddenly, the way you were organizing yourself to walk towards being an actor suddenly changed a little bit. Or the way you see yourself as an actor changed a little bit. And that's when I think where we have to own up to those moments. So the way that I start with actors is often owning that piece of your story where those things came in and diverted your path. So you can then find, like, who did I become? What story did I pick up? And do I still want to hold on to that story? And so that's where they bang their head against the wall a lot. Yeah.
Is going to be, can you sum it up as the story where we walk around feeling like a victim and therefore entering offices like a victim?
Yeah. Oh yeah. They're walking into offices and they're bringing that with them. And so because they're bringing that with them, there's like, I want to be in this meeting and I don't want to be in this meeting at the same time because I'm afraid you're going to see who I really am. And I'm holding on to that story for who I really am. So what is so interesting is through the journey of capturing your story and then figuring out how much of that and how do we put that into an email or into whatever method we use to reach out. In my program, we use an email as the first step. How do we put that into an email where first it doesn't sound delusional and you're like, not spilling all the beans and like, why are you telling me this about your life, right? Where it still feels professional, but we're still owning up to who I've been so far. Because the belief that I have to plant inside of you is, and in the manager or agent is, there is no better time for me to be connecting with you than right now in my life because I'm this much more prepared. So that's where they bang their head up against the wall. It's like, wait, you're telling me I have to look at who I've been? I don't want to do that. And then what happens is they look at it and like, and they just, this whole new sense of their shoulders become like relaxed. They become taller. Yeah.
From hiding all of that stuff to opening and being with and owning it. When you own it and you can share it, it's truth, right? And if it's truth, connect with truth.
Yeah. You connect with truth. And what I think is so powerful about what you just said so much, Joe, and the work that you do in this is we want to be in a room where someone sees you for who you are. Because what you don't want is to be in a room where like you're kind of puffing yourself up and trying to be perfect. Because then what I think happens is you actually are not at the top of your intelligence. And so you leave that meeting and you're not even like, someone says, how'd the meeting go? And you're like, I think it went well. I don't. And then you have to make a decision about, am I going to work with this one or am I going to work with that one? You're like, well, the person who's making the decision is the person, you weren't even in that room because this other version of you.
The key that we talk a lot about presence, and if you're hiding all the stuff that you're not owning up to, you're basically not there, right? You're doing something.
You're over here.
Yeah, you're over here. If you're not there, how can they possibly connect and see you? It just can't work, right? Yeah, you have to be present. You have to be there.
Yeah, and one of the ways I like to help actors is like, let's be selfish about this for a second. Like, look, you're going to do a really good job making a decision later if the real you doesn't show up. So make it about you if that's going to get you your objective clear to really show up in that room. The other part that I think is like, I realized is I've recently had this realization, which is I have this belief that I think I pass on to my students, which is if it's meant to be, it's going to work out. And if it's not meant to be, please, dear God, say no, that you don't want me and let me walk away so I don't give you any more energy. So if we kind of walk into every meeting as though I'm a yes person who's like willing to work with you so that I can, instead of show up with the question in my mind the whole time I'm there, because when we have that question in our mind, we're not present. We're just asking the question, is that the right thing they said? Did I like the way they said that? Like that's, instead of, okay, let's meet each other. This is a yes.
Yeah. It's a difference also between presence. We work on presence, never on confidence.
Yes. Yes.
Try and look good while you're hiding your shit in the back. Presence is just like, okay, here I am, and if I'm here, we can.
Yeah, and what I love the way you said that, because I always feel like confidence is about trying to make the other person feel the same way. It's not about me. We experience it as what we think confidence is, I think. But what we're really doing is trying to manipulate that person into seeing us a certain way.
Pure ego versus presence is true, not ego.
And then I think, part of what, and I mean, this, a little different from the way that you teach for acting is, I do think that it can help an actor to, and maybe it's similar, you'll tell me, what similar for an actor to like, let's run through like, what are the top 20 questions you're likely to be asked so that you've felt the words come out of your mouth so that you're not going to memorize your answer, but this way, at least you've like experienced yourself answer those questions a few times. And then you can be on the day, like I always say, like when we talk, don't play your homework, but be able to be there and respond to them, right? And so that way you just feel a little easier, because I often think that actors will be very like, oh, I'm good in a room. Like once I get in that room, like that meeting, I'm gonna be flat. Great, I'm sure you are so good in the room, but on the off chance you start to get weird and try to manipulate them into thinking you're confident, or you're over here thinking how things are going and you're not present, let's just practice this just as like a fail safe so you can be weird on accident for a second. Right? That you can just kind of, right? So I often talk about like like you said, the consciousness is where presence comes from. I think you're conscious that you're consciously in the room is one of the ways I talk about that. Yeah.
What you're also offering is creating a little bit of structure beforehand so that you can flow in the moment. Because if you have no structure, flow can be a little scary because you don't know where it's going. But if you have structure, we also talk about asking you some questions, because you're also, it's equal level relationship. It's not the agent is there. It make sure that person is the right person for you, so you have things to ask too, right?
Yeah, and that's a really good, and I'll just give everyone like a great question that I always think is a good one to use in the room, because it is so important that you don't leave that meeting and feel like, I don't know who they were. I didn't have a sense of who they were, right? So I always say, have a few questions that you feel like you can ask anyone just in your back pocket, and you may or might not need to use them because you'll be there and you'll feel the moment. But one of the questions that I always think is a helpful one is, no matter, okay, pretend I'm the actor now. Ready? So I would say, no matter what way, right. No matter what way this goes today, I just want to thank you, because it's great to hear from an expert who's sitting on your side of the table. And so looking at my career and knowing what you kind of know about it, if you were to kind of look in your crystal ball or look at what you think is next for me, what do you imagine might be next in my career?
Yeah, to pick the brain a bit.
Right. And what it also does is it makes them agent or manage your career for 5 minutes. So they're actually doing what their job is, and it gives you a sense. That way, when you leave, you get their answer. Oh yeah, their answer to that question did sound like what I think I want to go towards, right? And then I always think the question to ask is, we're always like, did I like them, and what were they like, and how old were they, what did their office look like, all these questions. How did you like yourself in the meeting?
Yeah.
How did you feel about yourself? Did you like who you were able to be with that person? And I always think that, now, one of the things I'll just say is a fault of the way that I work with actors is they tend to end up with more compassionate managers and agents, because we are using empathy and connection as one of our guidelines for judging someone, right? Judging, I put in quotes. So if you were looking for a shark who isn't acknowledging you, or if that's it, there's a different energy there, right? So I am drawn more to the manager or agent who sees you as an artist and understands the artistic life, right? So I would say that's a not fault, but way you might perceive the way that I do the work with my actors. Yeah.
Yeah, totally makes sense.
Yeah.
So many actors secure great aligned representation. So what would you say, we've talked about presence, which is probably the biggest missing piece. What are the training ingredients that actors should know about in order to get not just any representation, definitely, because that doesn't do anything, but the one that you need to be with?
Yeah. Allow some people not to like you. That's the most important thing. Like, hope, the way I say is, hope that some people say no.
Yeah. Pray
for some no's is what I say. Because what we need to, and the reason why I say that is, if you didn't get a single email that did, I always say to my actors, I hope that you'll get an email that says, you did this wrong, I don't like the way you emailed me, or I don't like what you sent me. If you got that email, then we know you put so much skin in the game that you were seen by someone, right? So to me, it's very important that we don't play this surface. Mm-hmm. It's going to feel vulnerable. You are going to have to put something in that email that feels a little, depending on where you're at in your life, might feel a little unsafe to say out loud, to own really where you are in your process, right? Now, I want to be careful, because this can be, like I said this earlier, like, we don't want to get delusional. We don't want to overshare. We don't have TMI. The way I always like to think about the person reading the email, the first email I always find is a clutch part of this process. So that first email, like, it should be fun to read. It should not be like, I don't want to worry about you when I read it, right? And it should reveal something. I should be able to see what's next for you. I should be able to have an imagination about it. And you need to imagine me as a person who is working at home with 2 kids running around, who might have been homeschooled for the past 18 months, who is barely reading your email while I make their peanut butter sandwich on my phone.
Exactly. That sounds...
That's kind of why the course is like, that's where we kind of help you, right? And the other thing that I think every actor needs in this journey, and I think I'm answering the question here, is you got to have structure that's without your own creation. And the reason why I say that is, your own, like, something's going to happen that's going to throw you. You need to know, what's my next step, without having to, like, look up around and go, how do I feel? And, like, here's your next step. This is what you're going to do next. And then you're going to do this. So that when those things start to come up, which should begin to pull you toward, you know what, I keep thinking about my email, I want to make a change to it, is different than, should I send another email? Should I not? Like, most actors will send one email and they bail on the process. Like, I didn't hear back, I'm done. In my program, we make you send 3 emails. And I got to tell you, it's weird. This is a very weird thing that I'm able to, like, pick up on now. There's, like, a seasonal thing where all of a sudden I'll be like, oh, it's weird. Everyone's responding on the 3rd email right now. Or they'll be like, oh, everyone's responding on the 1st email right now. And it literally is like, oh, it's the summer. So this past summer, all of a sudden we were maskless for a moment there. We were able to go, right? 3rd email was the first time anybody heard back from anything. In the fall, 1st email people heard back. So just, it's interesting to be on the receiving end of working with this many actors and kind of catching the trend there, and not ascribing a single dang feeling to whether they responded to your 1st or your 3rd.
Yeah. No meaning behind that. Yeah. Go up.
Yeah.
Like, I think that sometimes what I feel is helpful for actors, sometimes I make analogies with other, like, let's say you're a baker and you open your shop and you start making, are you going to just quit the shop if no one buys all the bread in the first, right? No, it's you are an artist, you have a business, and so you need to be determined and committed. When you want something, you show up for it.
Right.
And there's no, I like to talk about rejection as an invented word, that you get damaged things is complete perception. And so, if you're professional and if you want it, you want to be able to up with those 3 emails. And I know that your program goes over follow-up too, and getting through gatekeepers. And so maybe you can say a little bit about that too.
So I also think there's something to 2 pieces that I just picked up from what you said, which is, let's pretend you had an experience where you reached out to 1,000 managers and agents and no one responded, and no one even opened no one responded. Let's just stick with that for right now. Okay. So if we knew that they opened your email, which is one of the things in the program, we have a way of tracking if they opened your email, and they never responded, well, then you got a few places to look.
Yeah.
Did my email suck? Did my materials suck? Is the way I wrote my email suck? Did I need to change what I've sent them? You get to actually go back and look at how to make the changes, right? And then the other thing the other piece I want to take from what you said is, instead of making story about what that's about, like, no one likes me, they're not looking right now, because you could also make stories up about them, which I think is not right. I also think there's something to be said for, if a manager or agent can be found, like if you can find their email address, then there's a reason they can be found. It means they're open to being found. And so there's a part of me that believes if you can't get to them, there may be a reason why you shouldn't be able to get to them. And so instead of focusing on those 4, 5, 6 ones where there's like an email address that doesn't work, why don't we say, let's just cast a broader net and let go of that process, because they're probably not going to be looking as much. And so what we want to do, and this is why I think target lists are a disaster. I love the idea of a target list being, I am investing time in getting to know someone, and all that part makes sense to me. The part that doesn't make sense to me is you have no way of knowing that, so that's a big fat lie. There's no beautiful art museum of managers and agents or encyclopedia or Library of Congress where you can read all about their life and what their children are and where they live. There is a whole black hole called IMDb and your friends' rumors and experience that they can share with you. So when you make a target list, what happens is you're gleaning, like, here's a little information, here's a little information. Oh, my friend gets auditions. Great, I'm gonna make this list of the 12 perfect agents. And now when I'm perfect, I'll reach out to these perfect agents. And what I have found time and time again is when we cast a broader net, we let go of the idea of a target list, someone you never imagined comes forward and says, I love what you've got going on. They're a great, it's the way that I like to think, because this is not what a lot of people say, make a target list. And I just find that a target list is, if I'm going to be real Reverend Brian Patacca for a second here, it is if you imagine looking at the sky and there were all these stars in the sky. And you said, look at all these stars. I'm going to black out all but 6 stars. And I'm going to focus on those 6 stars, which first of all sounds like total otherworldly alien UFO, not the best on one level. And the other is, I believe when you create a target list, you're tying the universe's hands so it cannot provide to you who the person who could be your perfect match is. So that's a big leap for a lot of people, because a lot of people really believe in target lists. And time again, what I have found is by abandoning it, we have such better experiences. And so many actors inside of the program then have this, I think it's one of the most beautiful experiences, is when they have to say, I have to tell some people no. And it's for some of them, it is the first time they've had that experience in their life, because we're always like, do you want me to work on your job? Are you going to pick me? Am I going to get your job? Like, it's us, it's actors looking for the yes.
Yeah, and you're saying, what you're saying doesn't prevent you to also have a target list.
No, not at all. Sure, put them on there.
You want to.
Yeah.
And create that relationship with them or talk about specific things because you do know them. That doesn't prevent you either to continue.
No, I like to say, put them, great, let's add them to what we're doing. Let's not keep them out. Right, you might give them a little tiny bit of special treatment because you have been catering to them, but you're not going to zero in on only them. I think of this actress who went through the program. She had 35 meetings from her process, which is like super huge success story. I think that's a little spectacular for a moment, right? But before anybody out there like writes some story about like she's like must have every credit in the world, she didn't. So I just want to make sure no one makes her too special here. Yeah. But what she said was, who she ended up was with a manager she never would have imagined in the history of the universe that she even knew about. And there have all these great clients, and she knew who the clients were once she finally looked, but she never would have found them by like making a target list. And so that just is this, to me, a target list is like if you're using Tinder, you just swipe right on people just by looking at their profile. You're like, okay, their profile I like, which is kind of what Tinder is. But you're like, these 8 people are probably the ones that I want without ever knowing more about them. And that's why I think it's more beautiful to allow them to choose you.
Yeah. What a refreshing idea.
Right? Wild idea. I think I'm like super like, who's this radical crazy person over here? But then it's worked. So that's why I feel like it's a good one to say. Yeah.
And so can you explain a little bit for people who are interested, what is like an overview of the process you put them through, the steps that
Sure.
in, or maybe you have something that you can, a resource that you can share with them, or a webinar?
I'm going to do both. I'm going to do both. So if you're getting excited by what I'm talking about today, there's a free training that no matter what will change the way you think about representation. And the URL is so easy to memorize. It's makeagentswantyou.com. Makeagentswantyou.com. And if you think about the name of it, that's what my goal is through this process, is that they are choosing to want you, right? So overview of the process is kind of how I started, where we kind of go into your story of how you've shown up in your life. You dig a little bit deep into that. We have a process where we walk through, analyzing is a strong word, maybe assessing who you've been, where you've showed up, if there's some places that need to be healed, and you kind of just notice them. It doesn't mean we're like, let's sit here and go to group therapy for 3 weeks and now talk about it. If that's something you want to do, you can, but this is where we really discover some of those places where you might have picked up an old story that isn't serving you, right? And then from that, we start to discover what I like to call meet your reader, which is meeting the age. Like, what do you imagine about them and what is the truth of them?
Yeah.
And then we start to get into this process where I always say that one of the byproducts of this program is that you become a better writer. Because there's a good portion of this program which is around how we're going to present truthfully, authentically, not pumped up, not trying to tell some secret story or hide behind something. An authentic story of you that will also capture the attention of someone standing in line at Starbucks. So so that writing portion is really fun because I teach you how to copyright and how to use language that really captures you. And a lot of people have used that same thing to like run off, write newsletters, write to casting directors. So that part of it kind of gets fun because it's creative. And then we move into a very clear and simple structured part where I say, here's how you'll reach out. And that's where it's like, here's 1, here's 2, here's 3. We walk through how those emails are going to look. And then I give you a database for whatever market you're in. And then you put that through this beautiful program that tracks who's opened it and who's not opened it and how to, and then I give you what I think is so important is that's a moment where you've done all this beautiful work on yourself, blah, blah, then you're ready to reach out. And then now the vulnerability comes back because now people are going to see me. And so there's this, I think of this, a really beautiful lesson that is around how we interpret silence, how we interpret no or not yet, how we interpret a yes, how we interpret someone saying, I think your agent, I can't do any better than you're doing on your own. Like, what are our responses to that internally and what are our responses physically to that? So that process, like it like reinforces the juicy like discoveries about yourself. And then we have this other section called GPS, which is the Great Partnership Scale, where you learn how do I pick someone? I'm gonna get all these meetings. How do I pick my person? And then the top 20 questions, like I talked about, to prepare you for those meetings. And then you're kind of off and running. At that point, hopefully you're signing with Fabulous Representation. That's the experience that we're having. And through the process, I'm alongside you. I like see you every other week for the whole thing.
Sounds so is what I see in actors usually, the resistances and the stories that they're carrying around when it comes to representation and finding the right representation is I have no idea how any of what you're offering is a real structure that can hold them accountable step by step, give templates, some programs, some database. Yeah. It's like they can get in there and get the support they need to then express themselves fully.
Well, that's what you just said so beautiful. Like the structure gives you the sense power to be yourself in this journey, so you don't have to take care of every piece of it. And one of the things that I think is that you kind of pointed to is making the decision about reps is such a messy moment because like I liked this about them, what does their IMDb score say? And so some people will join the program and go straight to the Great Partnership Scale because they're in the process of divorcing or separating from an agent and trying to figure out who they need to become as they go into the next relationship. And so I think I like the way that it can meet some actors in that position where they're like, I think I'm ready to leave as well. So that's helpful, yeah.
Which is important because I see a lot of actors who are working a lot or not, but also the ones who are working a lot who are feeling a little bit in a sticky place with their agent. Even though they're working, like the communication is a little off, there's a lack of authenticity, and they also feel a little bit like, well, I can't, there's a lot of fear tied into that. I think because a lot of attachment, and again, throw in mommy and daddy in. Yeah. There's definitely, no matter what level you're at, it's really, really important for actors to feel empowered into those relationships. Yeah. Because you're under the agent. You're your collaborators, right? So you want to be able to show up authentically and fully. That's then what they can work with. If you're not really showing up, again, if you're not, whether they don't really know what to do with you.
Well, yeah, and one of the things you just said is, I'm a fervent believer in love first. And so what I always say is, I'm like, do you need to renew your vows, or is this time for divorce with your reps? And so a lot of times someone will start the program and say, I think I'm going to leave my agent and I want to look for a manager. Say, okay, great, we're going to use this program to look for a manager for you because your agent is working out maybe okay and you're not sure. So can we talk about who you've been as a client? And sometimes we go, oh, my side of the street could be a little bit cleaner. And so sometimes what we do is we'll say something like, okay, great, for the next 2-3 months, you're going to be like the most in it to win it client who is with it, going to just have the best generous and positive assumption about your reps for 2 months, and you're going to really be there, and you're going to see if that makes a change. And if it doesn't, then you're going to be able to have what I would say, it's a come to Jesus conversation with your reps, where you get to say, from a very non-triggered position, I'm looking at the numbers over here and it feels like things aren't happening. Do you feel like they are? And am I having a weird expectation? And suddenly be like, oh, actually, we're submitting you like crazy, and we haven't, like, you need to give them, I think, a position to the space to say, I agree with you.
Yeah, to not go, you know what? It goes back to romantic relationships. It's kind of the thing. If you're holding back and keeping everything and wanting to leave them without having faith confronted or having had an open conversation, sure, you can leave that agent or that relationship and get to the next one, have the exact same problem because you didn't work through what you had to work.
Yes. So, I mean, Joe, that's my belief is, yes, you're going to keep working out that same. I always say it's also like the thing where, like, you're mad at your roommate for never taking out the garbage, but you never asked them to take out the garbage. I think a lot of people can relate to that one from college days or whatever. So, like, you can't get mad till you say something. And so I feel like, can you have a generous and positive assumption about your agent and then ask a new question?
And actually ask, have you done your work? Meaning not asking as a victim, as a triggered person who's hoping to be saved, but as a business partner who's coming with facts, ideas on how to move forward. And then you have adults.
And I want to retire the question, what can I do to help you make your job easier? Let's retire that question. It went away in 1998. We're going to have a lot of we questions. What do we think we should do? What do we think's going on here? I'm curious to know what you think's going on. Like, no more, what can I do to make your job easier? Go just say that in your retail job. Let's say through your agent and manager, it's going to be like, this is a we relationship. And so I think, if we're going to underline this conversation, the big thing is we want to have a human relationship with our representation. And I always think that the magical place to live is having a positive and generous assumption about everything that they're doing. Because then if you need to have a more critical, like, can we look at this? And I mean, by critical, I mean analytical, not like you're doing that kind of critical, right? Then you can have it from a place where no one is emotionally too triggered, right? Because then you can look at the real numbers and then, data, not drama. What's going on with our numbers here, right? Yeah.
And then I also think that when you come from the place of being in a way that you've taken responsibility for your stuff, if there are emotions, but that are a consequence of the discussion and you're vulnerable and open, then it's endearing, magnetic, incredible. But if the emotion is what is getting you in their office to have the conversation, then, it's a difficult conversation to have. Right. Emotions are hard after you're an artist, so that they'll love that if you're coming forward empowered as an adult to have the conversation.
I mean, it's the difference between going like, I'm just looking at how many others said, and it kind of feels like it sucks over here. What do you think? Like, that is showing emotion, but it's not saying, what can I do? And like, is this manager? That's such a different conversation. Like, there's a sense of humor of like, what do you think is happening? Like, this sucks. Like, I want to be going out like crazy, and I'm sure you're submitting me. So what do we think's going on? Like, it just becomes very like, there's a heat to it that is let's get under the hood together.
Yes, it's alive. It's on the edge. It's constructive. It's constructive. Coming to move forward and not blame. People fall in love with you for that.
Yes, they do. And that's what I think we want the manager agent to do, right? Because what we do, I also think that, like, I really want to get actors with representation that's going to stay with them for years, because I don't want you to get back on this track again of having to look again or always looking, because I know so many actors who are always looking. They're not doing good enough for me, or I need to find somebody else. And it becomes this distraction to, like, what's the thing you're doing? Is looking for representation your other passion beyond acting? Because you're doing it a lot. So can we like, let's get somebody great so we can feel like, acting.
And because also I think getting somebody great needs you to be at that level too, right? So you need to work
up
level. Yeah.
I mean, I would love it if an actor was like, I feel like I intimidated them. Like, I would love for, like, and what I'll say is that some of the actors inside of my program will go like, she was pitching to me the whole time. So, like, my goal is that when you reach out, that you're so on the page, you're so vulnerable in the work that you're putting towards them with both the email and the tapes or the reel that you're sharing with them, that when you're getting called in for a meeting, the meeting isn't prove to me that you belong here. The meeting is, can I verify my suspicions that we already should work together?
Yeah.
Like, I want you I'm a yes when you sat down, and now I just need to confirm that what I read and what I saw is who you really are. I want you to be, so that's why I find like when people get multiple meetings inside the program, it's exciting because I go, those are pretty much yeses that are now just making sure that what they saw is what they think they saw. Right.
Yeah. That's great. So what is, and that people are joining as we go, and we've touched on this a little bit differently. What is the biggest mistake that the actors make in terms of finding an aligned rep?
I think the big mistake is saying yes to anybody and giving power to Joe Blow agent, giving power to Mr. McGee manager. Anyone who writes them back, whatever they say, is more powerful than anything I thought about my career, I thought about myself. Anything that they're saying back to me is bigger. So like sometimes I'll have somebody get a response from a really fancy agency. And I recently had an actress have this experience, and she got a bunch of meetings, but she had a really fancy agency wrote her back to just say, I love everything you're doing. You're not right for us right now. Blah, 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 blah. And she was like, that really meant a lot to me to hear from that agent. And I want to say yes and awesome. And also, we're not going to give that too much power, because also you were great before they said that. And so we have to just be very, I think, be careful around the power we give to the stranger we don't know, the made up person, right? Yeah. And that isn't to say everyone's not an incredible human being, citizen of the earth. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that in this very semi-permeable package of the artist, which is hypersensitive, that we don't allow it to distract us from our purpose, which I think is the big thing, right? So the big mistake I see people do is say yes to whoever knocks on their door, and then they're like going into a meeting already saying, I hope they pick me. When in fact I want you to go to the meeting and say, let's see if we pick each other. Let's see if this is,
And the bigger the agent, because it happens the same way with, the bigger the opportunity, the bigger the audition, the bigger the names, the bigger the agent, the more actors may have a tendency to actually lose their shit.
Yes.
Weigh the power. So you definitely want to make sure that you're aiming for those juicy managers and agents, and that you are not crumbling in the moment that you actually have that meeting because you estimate that they have more power than you or something.
Yeah, and so that mistake that I see the actor make is the reason why this hurts, I think, the most, is it takes away your ability to be discerning. And so then that's where you end up in that process of, oh, I had a lot of reservations about that agent, but I couldn't find anybody else, so I worked with them anyway. And so then you're in this weird rest area where you're stalled, because once you say yes to an agent, I just know that like the actor's not going to leave for at least 6 months, because I don't know if I should, and maybe they need more headshots, and maybe and it becomes this whole journey when in fact maybe it just wasn't a match in the first place. And so that's where that's a danger zone.
Yeah, a lot of actors are there. Yeah. There's so many actors being in that position of being like in between two chairs.
Yeah, between two ferns. Yes.
Okay, what else did I want to ask you?
This is a great thing. Joe, I just want to thank you so much. I really feel like you're really the Oprah to my Deepak today. I'm down.
Okay, so what is, if, like, let's say, what is a little thing that you could give actors who are ready to go there in this community? Let's say they're reset, they've done their reel, they've upgraded their reel, they're really ready to send it, and they're hungry. So what is the most effective tool to get reps to actually watch your material.
You're going to hate this, everyone. The most effective tool is to be super vulnerable in how you reach out to them.
Yeah.
So the most effective tool is to say, I'm owning who I am as an actor. There's a reason I haven't had reps till now. There's a reason that I'm reaching out right now. And let me tell you the things that are boring. Okay, this is going to be so hurtful, but here. No one cares how much you love acting. No one cares how much you are persistent. No one cares how much you have been diligent. And let me tell you the truth. I care. Joe cares. We care. Every actor in the world can say that. And so it suddenly becomes dissolved to the lowest common denominator, right? So what I always say is, and this is no great revelation, show, don't tell. So by telling me the actions of your life story, you are showing me how you showed up for this, right? And so the way to get them to watch it is to say, look how I've shown up, not look how I've shown up, but with a sense of humor, a sense of humility, right? Look how I've shown up. And so the way I like to think of it is, it's almost like when you're reading a menu. I always talk, it's like when you're reading a menu and you go, oh, this sounds like something that I'd like the taste of. So you have to give me enough of the ingredients on that menu for me to get that, like, oh, I like those flavors, right? And then there's,
right? In other words, truth means vulnerability and strength. You have to put your truth on that paper.
Yeah, yes.
To look good. It can't want to look confident. It has to be your truth. And that's the only thing another human being can connect to.
Right. And the magic here, Joe, what you just said is, so if you're going to tell me these are the 4 ingredients or 5 ingredients in this item, then when I look at your materials, I sure as shit better taste those 5 ingredients. Right.
Oh,
so
yeah.
I believe that our business is becoming so much more evidence-based right now, because we were already moving into a world where we do self-tapes, and now we're moving into a world where 2020 happened. And so now, thanks 2020, we're really kind of setting off tapes before we get to meet people. And so if you say you can deliver this kind of funny, you better show me you doing this kind of funny, right? So
the first ingredient is for you to be your most incredible actor in the first place, right? Because if you're going to run around the city and you're not ready for any audition and your reel is wonky, you're setting yourself up for failure, right?
Yeah.
You're the main ingredient at the end.
And then I think that also when we think about this, like, think about the way you relate to a menu, just to kind of, I think this helps to like separate yourself from the story a little bit. There's certain menus where you see like, oh, I don't like blank, I never order blank. And it has nothing to do with hating the chef.
Yeah.
Right. I just don't, that's not what's on my roster. We don't have tomatoes on my roster, so I'm not going to order that. Right. Like, I am obsessed with yuzu. It's my favorite flavor in the world. If there's yuzu in anything, I will order it. I hate raw tomatoes, so unless I can have them removed, I won't have that, right? Yeah. So like, you have to also, that has nothing to do with you. So this is where we get to have a little bit more of, but the trick here is, and I think this is where actors really hear this, if you're listening, is you have to show up in that email. And this is where we can suddenly become puffed up and be inauthentic. And I know we've said this a few times, but this is where it needs to be more than just a laundry list of what you've done. I always think that the letter is, the email, the first reach out is the place where you fill in the blanks between your resume. Because so many actors want to reduce themselves to their resume. Well, what about talking about how you got called into that casting office? Who cares if you booked it? But like, their client isn't getting called into that casting office. Holy cow, you got in for that job? Wait, you were called back for that? My client didn't get a call back for that. Those are almosts. So how do you, and this is what I teach inside of the course, how do you dress up those almosts, not to sound like losses, but incredible wins that you are tracking along the way that they would care about. So that's one of the things I think is so important.
Yeah, really shedding some light on how uniquely you're showing up, and then they can see that in your resume, and then they can see that in your reel, and then when all of your pieces are aligned, they want to see you. They want to be part of it.
And also, don't confuse me. Like, that's like, I want to make sure we just like hit that for a second. Don't confuse me. Don't like talk about UCB and groundlings and you're funny and blah, 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 and then you've got like 2 dramatic scenes. Like, why are you, a confused mind says no. We've all heard that before. But like, if you confuse me, I'm like, thank you so much. My kid wanted a grilled cheese right now. I got to go. Like,
and it's really because they are not just looking at your submission today or this week.
Thousands.
They are many that if you're not hitting the nail on the head, is that the expression?
Yeah.
On the head all the time. Again, it's a story that's wonky. You need to be harmonized, consistent, aligned, and then they get the little essence of you that's so special, so unique. And that makes you different from everybody else, right?
Yeah. And Joe, one of the things you just said that I think I would love everyone to take away with this is, because you reach out so vulnerably and inside the program to kind of really share who you are, many times you'll get a response from someone that says, I loved your email so much. I don't have room for someone like you right now, but I wanted to thank you. It was so nice to get to know you. And if I can't read your email and feel that way, then something's missing. Like, I should feel like there was I always say, when you're clicking send, there should be sweat on your hand because it's vulnerable. It should be a little scary for a moment. And one of the pieces that we haven't talked about, but I'm going to just really underline, is throughout my course, and anyone who's reaching out to agents, I want you to hear this. You need to double down on your self-care in the time when you're reaching out to agents. Because what you forget is, in the moment that you have the thought of, I want to reach out to managers and agents, your body already starts to let little energy come out of your mitochondria of each of your cells is starting to go, yep, that's what I want. That's what I want. And that can leave you at such a deficit where we don't want you to end at the end of this process and have all these meetings and you feel a little like, that was a lot. Oh my gosh. Okay, now I have to go to meetings. So it's so important to me that through this journey, you are nurturing yourself to know, I'm about to really put myself out there so that you have a relationship with that part of you that expands, that presence that you talked about, so that you can have the faculty to be present even, you know?
And in a way, about this and what you just said before, I also want to make a parallel for actors. It's the exact same process. You don't want to write that letter in a generic way. You want to write that scene in the good or the right way. That's not what anyone is looking for. They're looking for you, for a human being who's open, alive, free of. So whether it's writing that letter from your heart, whether it's walking in that audition room or making a tape, actually risking as an artist to get your point of view on something.
Yes.
And do it right. It's not school. It's not homework. It's actually something you've chosen. It's your art. And what people are looking for in artists is their own unique opinion. Yes, it's scary. Yes, you can fall flat on your face. And that's the only way to have fun at it.
Yes.
And to give fun on the other side, right? I want to say, I had heard someone, it's not my analogy, but I've heard someone use it. If you're not doing that, it's a little bit like trying to hoover the whole house and not plug the hoover in. To every room, I did send every letter to everyone on IMDb. I did it, and I did have a headshot, and I sent everything. I did every single house, and look, I did the corners a few times. You can see them. You're like, but you didn't plug the hoover in. There was no in there. There was no electricity. There was no power.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think that's I also want actors to hear. I'm against. I love hating the word hard work.
Oh.
I want to make sure that actors know that it's not the hard work that it's your honest and truthful work and alignment in that meeting.
Yes.
It's not, or in that audition. It's not the hard work.
Yeah.
You can't. The hoovering without the plug is hard, but it won't do anything.
Right. Yeah. One of the things you're saying, Joe, is so good is because I think the words hard work, like you're saying, is to kind of dispel that, is where it is, I think, a stretch is we're going to ask you to articulate how you really feel when you're expressing yourself. And actually putting words to emotion can sometimes be like, I've got a vocabulary of 5 words, happy, sad, and cranky, like whatever. And so I always will be pushing, like, let's increase our emotional vocabulary a little further, or our experiential vocabulary, so we can describe something. So so
that you can describe the way that you're conveying your experience, and they can experience you.
Yeah. Oh, is your internet okay? You're spinning a little bit.
But your voice is there.
Yeah, yours is too. So, well, let's keep going.
Yeah, such a true thing. If you're not showing up, if your engine is not turned on, your specific, unique, vulnerable, wonderful, human, open self is not there. And
putting it on paper, and also I'll just say, like, an actor inside of one of your classes probably gets like, I didn't show up all the way. I wasn't really there. I know it, right? And then saying, how do you take that and put it on paper? Writers will kind of like know how to do that. So that's why I say that huge portion of this is like focused on the writing. Like, let's build your vocabulary around explaining your experience. And remember, all that we want. So I always say, like, if you're the actor who's just gonna puff themselves up and talk, like you said, the Hoover that's not plugged in, that you're just hoovering all the, I'm just gonna list it and write this email very simply and blah blah blah. You are reducing yourself to only your credits in your tape. You're not letting them buy into potential. They're gonna have to make the assumption about your potential based on only that. And by having an email or expression of more of your story, it allows us to see where's this person headed. And I think it also gets you probably the manager agent who more understands what you want because you've said that. And
it's also the manager that you are an actor, that you can convey life, that you can touch someone, right? If you're all dry and generic, not using your talent.
Yeah, and also it's so weird because actors are usually so super expressive, and I think like 1998 called and it wants their cover letters back, where you're being super professional and not interesting, and like give it back to them, because now we need to bring interest in. Remember that if 2020 gave us one good thing, let's just pretend for a second, suspend disbelief, that it gave us a sense of our global humanity, I would say. And so if we're going to believe into that, then why would we not be human in the way we reach out to people?
Yeah, the way I frame our program, but it works for what you do totally and what you just said, is let's stop trying to be entertained and be interested in this moment, right? When you enter that room, make sure you're interested in this moment rather than trying to be interesting, because then you're not in.
Yeah, so good. So good. So good. Joe, this is incredible. I felt like I really was grilled today, and I loved it. I'm like sweating over here. I'm excited. This is like my favorite thing to talk about. I love it so much. So I'm just so grateful.
I think everyone would love. I would love if I were an agent. I would definitely work for you. Love your energy. You're so enthusiastic, and I love like everything that you're explaining about your program and the structure. I'm sure it's so helpful and so effective.
Thank you.
Yeah,
so it's fun. The surprise is that it's fun, right? So I appreciate you saying that. The surprise, and the other thing is, here's the secret. I'm really just trying to make more actors with more presence who feel more sure of themselves and more worthy. The end byproduct is you get a manager or agent. Like, that's what I always say, right?
Definitely. Well, so I hope that everyone checks you out. Let's put the link. You put it in the comments?
I can't. I won't allow you to link. I think the best way is to go to my profile and just click it, or to go to makeagentswantyou.com. The link is in my profile, and it says, free.
wantyou.com. It won't.
Makeagentswantyou.com. No, it won't turn into a link.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So makeagentswantyou.com. So someone is asking, will you replay?
Actually, the good news is for both Joe, Kelly, and myself, this will post directly to our Instagram feed. So you'll see this there, that you can watch it at any time. So it'll be living there, ready to go.
Yeah. Let me see if we have any questions.
Oh, questions. I love it.
No, we have some love.
Okay.
Love you both so much from coaching. Thank you. It's a gift. Thank you, Brian and Joe. Great stuff. Some thumbs up, some love.
If anyone has a question, I'm very open to share whatever. So y'all, if you have a question, feel free to pop that up there and we'll talk to you.
Yes, definitely. You can pop the question in the comments. And I think, no, we're just getting some love. You were so clear.
Great. Great.
Yes, guys, definitely check out Brian. The best at what he does and the funnest. So go ahead.
Thank you.
There we go.
Say again.
No questions.
Okay, great. Thank you, Joe. I just want to thank you so much for having me today. I really appreciate this so much. I'm glad we're connected, and we'll have to do more fun things.
Yes, let's do it.
All right. Take care. Bye, everyone. Love you. Keep acting it, people. Bye.
Yes.